Welcome to Moonlit Inc. BL. A story written under moonlight. Let's begin. Prologue. If life were fair, Keith Lim wouldn't be juggling 3 deadlines, a malfunctioning coffee machine, and a side hustle that made him sound like an undercover actor in low-budget documentaries. But life wasn't fair. Life gave him clients. And Keith, at 26, was a freelance graphic designer by day, and a boyfriend for hire by night. Well, not like that. More like a stand-in boyfriend. A pretend ex-boyfriend. A rented emotional support human. And once, a 1-hour, please glare at my boss so he knows I have backup, hire. His rule was simple, as long as it's reasonable, he'll be the person you need. And honestly, it paid better than designing logos for people who confused minimalism with, just make it look expensive. Most gigs were small, harmless, and actually pretty fun. The dramatic ones usually came from teenagers, the awkward ones from lovesick engineers, and the best-paying ones from CEOs and actresses who needed a prop date to fend off nosy relatives. But tonight, as he sat cross-legged on his couch wearing an oversized dinosaur hoodie, his phone chimed with a notification that made him blink twice. New request, emotional support human. He tapped it open. Client wants someone to just listen. No advice. No comments. Just, exist with him for an hour. And the listed pay? His brows shot so high they almost left his forehead. Okay, that's generous. Suspiciously generous, Keith murmured. Curious, he clicked the client's profile. Name, Liam Park. Age, 28. Occupation, unknown. Photo, a clean-cut guy with soft black hair, neat button-downs, and a smile so practiced Keith could practically hear the photographer saying again, but look happy. He looked normal enough. Handsome even. But his smile, it didn't reach his eyes. And in group photos, his friends looked genuinely happy while he looked present. Like he showed up because he was supposed to. He scrolled a bit more, and landed on one candid picture where he wasn't looking at the camera. His expression was blank, tired. Real. His chest tightened unexpectedly. Then a message popped. Message from Liam. Please. Can you come over tonight? Keith froze. Tonight? His mind immediately split into 2 battling Keiths. Responsible adult Keith, stranger danger. Could be a serial killer. Or worse, someone who folds towels into thirds and judges you. Rent a boyfriend Keith, but the pay is so good. His pulse skipped, and he let the message sit on his screen while the apartment went quiet around him. He bit her bottom lip. Should he go? Chapter 1, The First Visit. Keith stared at Liam's message for a solid minute before his thumbs moved on their own. Keith. Can you send the address? I'll check if I can make it. It took him 5 seconds to reply. Liam. Unit 1905, Westbury Residences. It's okay if you can't. I really need someone to listen tonight. Westbury. Westbury? The building was 3 blocks away. He snorted softly. Well, that makes the serial killer probability higher, he muttered. Convenience kills. Still, his feet were already finding his shoes before his brain fully confirmed his choice. The pay was good, yes, but something about that desperate, please, told him this wasn't someone looking for entertainment. This was someone drowning. And Keith had always been weak to that tone. He sent one last text. Keith. I'm on my way. And send me the passcode so I don't have to fight your doorman. Liam. 0611, doors unlocked. Lovely. He was definitely going to die. 10 minutes later. Westbury Residences was the kind of fancy that made you walk straighter. The lobby smelled like fresh linen and rich people's tax exemptions. Keith nodded at the guard, who gave him a suspicious once-over, dinosaur hoodie and all. The elevator ride felt too quiet. When the doors opened to the 19th floor, his stomach tightened. He found the unit, took a breath, and pushed the door open. And froze. The apartment wasn't messy. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't trashed. It was perfectly clean, in that way people clean when they're trying very hard not to fall apart. Lights dim. Curtains halfway drawn. Empty coffee mug on the counter like someone tried to make caffeine fix heartbreak. Then he saw him. Liam Park, sitting on the living room floor beside the couch, elbows on his knees, head bowed like his whole body had forgotten how to hold itself up. This wasn't the man from the photos. This wasn't the practiced smile. This was someone who looked like he'd been hit by a truck made of betrayal and emotional shrapnel. He lifted his head when he heard his steps. And God. His eyes. They were red, raw, burning, exhausted. "Hi," he said, voice cracking on a single syllable. Keith nodded gently. "I'm here." He didn't waste a second. The words came like a broken dam. "He cheated," Liam said, breath shaking. "My fiancée. My God, 5 years. 5 years, and he kept saying he was busy." Keith sat quietly on the floor a safe distance beside him, crossing his legs, hands on his lap. Listening. Only listening. He choked out a bitter laugh. Busy. He was busy screwing my best friend. Keith's jaw clenched, but he didn't say anything. Contract rules. No advice. No comments. Liam kept going. And the worst part, he looked at me like he was doing me a favor. Like I should have known he was bored. Like I was boring. Keith's fingers curled against his knee. He said I was too plain. Too predictable. That I'd never go far in life if it wasn't for him. Liam swallowed harshly. Just because I'm a project manager. Because I don't make millions. Because I'm not exciting. He pulled at his own hair, voice trembling. I did everything. I planned every date. I listened to him talk about his job. I supported everything he wanted to do. And when he cried, I held him. And when he was sick, I cooked. I cleaned. I tried. I always tried. Keith wanted to speak, wanted to tell him he was worth more than people who weaponized love, wanted to tell him he wasn't boring, that being steady wasn't a flaw, that loyalty didn't make him less interesting. But the rule echoed in his head. Just listen. So he did. Minute after minute, heartbreak after heartbreak, betrayal after betrayal. And at some point, maybe when his voice cracked for the 4th time, maybe when he hugged his knees like he was trying to keep himself from shattering, Keith lifted one hand. Slowly. Gently. And placed it on Liam's shoulder. Liam's breath hitched. He didn't look. Didn't say anything. But his trembling eased just enough to let his chest rise and fall again. When the timer on Keith's phone quietly buzzed, he didn't move right away. Liam noticed. And he exhaled shakily. Thank you. For staying. Keith nodded, and stood. No goodbye hugs, no comforting words. Just the job. He walked and left silently. Down the elevator, through the lobby, out into the cool night. Only when he reached the sidewalk did his phone buzz again. Liam. Payment sent. Thank you for listening. He stared up at the 19th floor. And there he was. Liam Park, standing on his balcony, hands on the railing, eyes on him as though he wasn't quite ready to let the night go. Keith's heart tugged in a strange, unexpected way. Keith turned and walked home, thinking. I hope that helped. Even just a little. He didn't expect what would happen next. He didn't know that tonight was only the beginning. And he definitely didn't know that this wouldn't be the last time Liam Park called him. Chapter 2, The Client Who Returned. Keith had never, not once, done a repeat session. His rule was firm. One client. One request. One night. People didn't get attached, and he didn't end up accidentally becoming someone's emotional crutch or rebound fantasy. But somehow, Liam Park had decided that he would be the exception. The first message came in at 10 a.m. Liam, can I book you again? Same terms. Keith rolled his eyes at his phone. No, Liam. That's not how this works. He typed back, I'm not available. And I don't do repeats. Ever. He saw it immediately and replied in seconds. Liam, please. Just one more hour. Keith pinched the bridge of his nose. Keith, I'm sorry, Liam. I can't. 5 minutes later, he sent another message. Liam, I'll pay double. His mouth literally dropped open. Double? Is he out of his mind? He didn't respond. Closed the app and turned off his notifications. This was exactly why he didn't repeat clients. People got attached. People confused his presence for healing when he was simply a paid placeholder for someone who actually mattered. He shook his head and went about his day, worked on a logo, ate instant ramen, watered his plants, and tried to ignore the part of his chest that still remembered the way Liam looked last night. By late afternoon, he walked to his usual coffee shop. His brain was already humming excitedly for his order, iced hazelnut latte, extra shot of, please let today be easy. He pushed through the door. And nearly collided with someone. Oh, sorry. Keith stopped. Oh. Oh no. Liam froze. They both stared. He looked different today. More put together, hair neatly styled, dark shirt tucked in, but his eyes were still that same quiet hurt, like he hadn't slept enough, like every breath cost him something. Keith, he said softly. Liam. Keith swallowed. You're here. What a small city, Keith thought. His jaw tightened as if embarrassed. I didn't know where else to go. Before he could ask another question, Liam reached out, hesitant, trembling slightly, and gently wrapped his fingers around his wrist. Not gripping. Not pulling. Just holding. 1 hour starts now, he whispered. Keith blinked at him. I didn't agree. I know. He swallowed hard. But please just be here. Just an hour. I won't ask again. He should have said no, should have stepped back, should have reminded him that he wasn't his therapist, his partner, or his lifeline. But something in his eyes, something raw and pleading, cut right into his resolve. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't manipulative. He was hurt, and he just didn't want to be alone. Keith sighed. Fine. 1 hour. That's all. Liam's expression softened, really softened, and he saw something she never expected, a small, shy, genuine smile. It was the first real smile he'd seen on him. Thank you, he whispered. He took him to a small rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, tucked away from crowds and noise. They found a table in the corner, hidden behind some plants. Liam sat across from him, fingers tapping anxiously against the glass of water. Keith rested his chin on his hand. You requested me. You bumped into me. You dragged me here. Now talk. Liam let out a breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. I don't know where to start. Anywhere, Keith said, voice softer. It's just listening, remember? No pressure. He nodded. Looked down at his hands. And then the floodgates opened again, not with rage this time, but with quiet vulnerability. I woke up today and the bed felt too big, Liam murmured. I made coffee for 2 people before realizing I'm the only one who lives there now. Keith's chest tightened. I didn't know what to do with myself, he continued. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be with friends. I didn't want to exist in the usual places. He glanced at Keith. And all I could think about was last night. How it felt to just talk without someone judging me. Without someone telling me what I should have done to avoid being cheated on. Keith said nothing, the contract echoing silently between them. Liam swallowed. I know this is just a job for you. I know you don't do repeats. But today, I just needed someone who wouldn't pretend everything's fine. Someone who wouldn't try to fix me. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just listened. Liam's voice softened to almost a whisper. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts yet. Keith's heart tugged painfully at that. Chapter 3, The Attachment No One Saw Coming. For the next few days after the rooftop dinner, Keith expected Liam to fade out like all his other clients. But he didn't. It started with a simple, "Good morning." Keith blinked at the screen. He typed, "Morning." He shouldn't have replied. He knew that. But he did. The next day. Liam, have you eaten? Keith, yeah. You? Then. Liam, don't forget to take breaks while you work. Keith, I won't. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't demanding. It wasn't creepy or clingy. Just present. Keith never messaged first. Not even once. But Liam kept texting, and he kept answering, and the thread grew longer, softer, warmer. And he could feel it, something quiet forming between them. Something he shouldn't be giving him. Something he shouldn't be returning. Attachment. The late night call. Keith was asleep when his phone buzzed violently on his nightstand. He groaned, grabbed it blindly, squinted at the caller ID. Liam. He sat up immediately. Hello? His voice was thick with sleep. There was no greeting on the other end. Just shaky breaths. Wet sniffles. A broken whimper. Then Liam's voice, hoarse, trembling. Keith, can you come? Keith's spine straightened. What's wrong? He choked out, hiccuping. I want to book you again. 2 hours. I'll pay, whatever, just. I don't know what to do anymore. Keith's heart dropped. Liam was crying so hard he could hear him dry heaving through the receiver. He sounded like he couldn't breathe, like the world had collapsed on him and he was clawing at the weight. Keith didn't think. Didn't negotiate. Didn't say contract starts now or I don't do repeats. He was already moving. Hoodie. Shoes. Wallet. His feet were out the door before his brain registered he'd left. He reached Westbury residence in record time, practically sprinting the whole way. The door's passcode still worked. He pushed it open. And froze. The once neat apartment was a disaster. Papers scattered everywhere. Throw pillows on the floor. The coffee table pushed aside. A picture frame shattered near the wall, glass glinting under the lights. And in the center of it all was Liam. On the floor. Arms around his knees. Eyes swollen and puffy. Breathing uneven. Like he had been trying, failing, to hold himself together until someone walked in. Until he walked in. Keith didn't hesitate. He crossed the room, dropped to his knees beside him, and gently wrapped his arms around him. For a moment, Liam didn't move. Then slowly, brokenly, he leaned into him, forehead pressing against his shoulder as his entire body trembled. He clutched Keith's sleeve like he was afraid he'd vanish. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice shredded. I'm so sorry for calling. I couldn't. Liam, Keith breathed, tightening his hold. You're okay. I'm here. He let out a cracked sob, burying his face in his hoodie. I tried, he choked. I tried so hard today. I cleaned. I worked. I tried to pretend everything was okay. But it's not. Everything reminds me of him. Of them. Of how stupid I must look. And it hurts, Keith. It hurts so much. Keith's throat burned. This wasn't a rant. This wasn't anger. This was heartbreak splitting him open. And Keith, despite every rule he had, found himself whispering words he had promised never to say to any client. It's okay to fall apart, he murmured softly. You don't have to be strong right now. You'll get through this. Maybe not today, but someday. Liam shook harder, breathing raggedly. I don't want to feel like this. I know, he whispered, brushing Liam's hair back gently. But you don't have to go through it alone. Liam clung tighter. Keith couldn't be neutral anymore. Couldn't be silent. Not when Liam was breaking in his arms. He held him through it, every sob, every gasp, every whispered apology that wasn't really for him but for the universe that kept hurting him. And somewhere in the middle of his trembling breaths, Keith realized something terrifying. He wasn't just doing her job anymore. He cared. Maybe too much. But tonight, that didn't matter. Tonight, he stayed. Tonight, he was his anchor. Tonight, he let him fall apart in his arms. Because seeing Liam break like this tugged at his chest in a way he couldn't ignore, even if he knew he should. Chapter 4, The Shift Neither of Them Intended. Morning crept into Liam's apartment slowly, quietly, like it was afraid it would wake him up too soon. Keith stirred first. His back ached from leaning against the couch all night, Liam's head having eventually found a place against his shoulder. At some point Liam's breathing steadied, his fists uncurled, and exhaustion finally dragged him under. Keith tried to slip away gently. He didn't get far. Liam's fingers tightened around his sleeve, soft but desperate, like he was afraid of waking up alone again. Keith? Liam mumbled. Yeah, he whispered. I'm still here. Liam relaxed, breathing out a shuddery sigh. And Keith felt it again, that strange ache in his chest. This was wrong. Too intimate. Too close. He was never supposed to be this for anyone. Later, when Liam was fully awake and sitting beside Keith on the couch looking far too fragile for someone who looked physically fine, he spoke. Can we grab coffee? Liam asked quietly, avoiding Keith's eyes. Liam, Keith exhaled. I don't think that's a good idea. Liam's shoulders stiffened. He looked like Keith had pulled away from him in the middle of a storm. But then his expression sharpened with determination Keith did not expect. If you don't say yes, he muttered, I swear I will shout your name on every street in this city until you come out. Keith blinked. You wouldn't. I would. That's embarrassing. For both of us. But I'll do it. He stared at him, wide-eyed, and then sighed in defeat. Liam, we live close by. You don't need to search the whole city. He froze. What? Keith rubbed his face, tired. He pointed out the window toward another building 3 blocks away. I live there. That's why I got to you so fast last night. Liam's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. You're kidding. No, Liam. He stared at him like he had just admitted he was secretly Batman. Then, that explains so much. Keith didn't want to know what so much meant. But he agreed to coffee. Mostly to avoid having his name screamed across the city. They didn't take the train or a ride. They walked. Side by side. Not touching. But close enough that the air between them felt different. The city around them was loud, voices, cars, vendors, the occasional horn, but somehow even that noise felt less chaotic than what they'd just been through. Liam stuffed his hands into his pockets. "Do you like these walks?" "I like coffee," Keith said. "That answers nothing." "I know." He heard the small huff of laughter Liam tried to hide. It was nice. Too nice. Inside the cafe, they sat at a small table by the window. It was supposed to be simple. A 1-hour, casual talk. But it stretched. And stretched. And soon it wasn't about trauma or heartbreak. It was about them. Chapter 5, The Line They Keep Pretending Isn't There. Keith wasn't sure when it started, that uneasy sense of being watched, of Liam's eyes following him just a beat longer than they should. At first he chalked it up to Liam's trauma, to him clinging to any sense of stability like a man trapped in a storm. But by the time the third day passed and he was waiting for him outside his building, he knew he couldn't keep pretending he didn't notice. Liam held up a paper bag of takeout, almost sheepish. "I brought dinner." Keith blinked at him. "You walked here." "I know. It's out of your way." "I know." "And the reason?" Liam exhaled, the air leaving him like a confession he didn't want to say aloud. "I didn't want to be alone tonight." That was all. No dramatic delivery, no trembling voice. Just honesty, quiet and raw. Keith pressed his lips together. "All right. Come in." Liam's steps slowed once inside Keith's apartment. It wasn't big, but it was warm, soft lighting, neutral tones, shelves that held more art supplies than books, and a dedicated corner that looked like it belonged in a cozy craft cafe. Paint tubes scattered on the desk, unfinished sketches pinned on the wall, a lone canvas drying in the corner. Liam turned in a slow circle, taking everything in. "This apartment is so you." Keith let out a small, embarrassed laugh as he set the takeout on the counter. "Messy?" "Alive," he corrected gently. Keith paused, because he wasn't used to being described that way. But he shook it off and pointed toward the dining table. "Well, come on. Sit before the food gets cold." Liam obeyed, but his eyes didn't leave him for long. Liam watched as Keith moved around the kitchen, brewing coffee with the familiar ease of someone who did it without thinking. He watched the way he pushed his hair back. He watched the quiet grace in his simple motions. He shouldn't have been watching any of it. He wasn't supposed to want to. Keith set the steaming mug in front of him. "Here. Maybe caffeine will help." "Do you do this every night?" Liam asked softly. "Make coffee?" "Yes." "Have someone over?" "No," he answered quickly. Liam's gaze flickered, something warm and unsure settling on his face. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't," Keith said, but even he could hear the hesitation in his voice. They ate in a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, but wasn't safe either. Liam kept stealing glances, and Keith saw them. Felt them. Every one of them. Liam was trying so hard to appear normal, to show he was functioning again, but he didn't fool Keith. Not with the way he flinched when his phone buzzed. Not with how his shoulders tensed every time he went quiet for too long. Not with how he gravitated toward him like he was a warm light in a room full of shadows. And that was the problem. Because Keith could feel himself responding to Liam too easily, too naturally. Like his heart remembered what it felt like to be wanted, even if this wasn't really about him. When Liam finally lifted his eyes, they were filled with something heavy and unspoken. Something he was afraid to name. "Keith." Keith's breath caught. Liam's voice was quiet. Barely above a whisper. But there was something different in it, something that made his pulse stutter. He put his fork down, his instinct screaming at him that the moment was shifting, tilting dangerously close to the one place he couldn't go. He looked at him. Really looked. Then finally asked the question he had been swallowing for days. "What are you doing, Liam?" And the moment the words slipped out, Liam froze. Chapter 6, The Quiet Snap. Liam froze. Liam looked at Keith, and Keith could see it all in his eyes: confusion, fear, a faint blush creeping up his neck, and denial. I don't know," Liam whispered finally, voice rough. I mean, what are you asking?" Keith felt his chest tighten. That wasn't an answer. That was everything. "Liam," he said carefully, keeping his voice steady even though his hands trembled slightly, "you're here. You keep showing up. You keep leaning on me. I need to know what this is." Liam shook his head, almost violently. "It's not like that. I know. You're my, it's just," his words stumbled, choked off by a groan. Keith's stomach sank. He could feel it, the fragile line he'd been holding between professional detachment and, whatever this was, whatever was growing between them, snapping. Keith pushed back from the table, taking a step toward the door. "Liam," he said, voice firmer now, "you need to go." Liam flinched, like the words hurt more than he expected. I didn't mean. "You need to leave," Keith repeated, softer this time, almost pleading. I can't be this for you. Not like this. I can't be your rebound. Not your placeholder. Not your, whatever this is. Please, go." Liam's shoulders slumped, his head dipping, eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man realizing the ground beneath him had shifted, and maybe it had. He had been building this new attachment, thinking it was safe, casual, but Keith had just drawn the line. Liam whispered finally, voice hoarse. "I don't want to leave. I need you." Keith's chest tightened painfully. He wanted to reach for him, to reassure him, to let the tension dissolve in a hug, to tell him that maybe it wasn't wrong to want someone. But he didn't. He stayed firm. "No, Liam," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You can't need me like this. Not here. Not now." Liam lifted his head, finally meeting Keith's eyes. His gaze was raw, pleading. "But I do. I can't help it. I tried to fight it, I tried to keep it to myself, but I can't." Keith's heart ached, but he knew the boundary he had to hold. He took a deep breath. "Then, you need to go. I can't do this." Liam didn't argue. Not loudly. Not physically. He just sat there, staring at him, chest heaving, a quiet, broken sound leaving his lips. Keith walked to the door, hands trembling. He didn't look back. His heart was pounding, his stomach twisted with guilt and fear, but he had to protect himself, his space, his rules. When he reached the door, he gave him one last look. "Please, respect me. Respect this." Liam nodded slowly, swallowing hard. His eyes lingered on Keith, filled with longing, regret, and something unspoken he didn't know how to name. He left. The apartment was suddenly quiet, empty. Keith closed the door behind him and leaned against it, sliding to the floor. The quiet felt deafening. His chest ached. His heart ached. He hated that he felt relief, and loss, all at once. Somewhere outside, he thought he could hear the city carrying his voice, faint and hesitant. Chapter 7, Spiraling. The moment Keith closed the door behind him, something inside Liam cracked. He stood in the hallway for a long second, breath trapped in his throat, chest tightening like a fist was squeezing around his heart. He didn't even remember taking the elevator down. Didn't remember walking out of Keith's building. All he knew was the pain. Sharp. Real. Physical. That thin thread of hope he thought he had, of him, of them, was slipping through his fingers, fading so fast he couldn't breathe. He wanted to call him. He wanted to run back. He wanted to hold on to Keith and beg him to tell him he wasn't losing everything again. But he had drawn a boundary. A line he wasn't supposed to cross. And it hurt so much he had to hold the wall to stay upright. By the time he reached his apartment, he felt hollow. Liam didn't even take his shoes off. He walked inside, numb, and looked around like the room was unfamiliar. The silence mocked him. The emptiness of the space slapped him in the face. It reminded him that he was alone. Again. He snapped. He started cleaning. Not because it needed cleaning, but because his mind was unraveling and tidying the apartment felt like the only thing he could control. He scrubbed the counters, reorganized the drawers, wiped the shelves twice, then again, like he could erase the chaos inside his chest by erasing dust. But nothing helped. He was spiraling. He knew he was. Still, he kept going. Hours passed. He didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Didn't think, not clearly anyway. By morning, he was trembling from exhaustion. He called in sick without thinking, dropped his phone somewhere in the sheets, and collapsed onto his bed. He didn't know how long he lay there. Minutes, hours. Time was blurry. And then the tears came. Not because of Mike cheating on him. Not because of his best friend's betrayal. No. This time, he cried because he had lost Keith. He couldn't lose him too. He couldn't. That thought was the one that broke him. His hands shook as he grabbed his phone. He didn't think. He just pressed his name. He didn't pick up. He tried again. No answer. He tried a third time, breath hitching, vision blurring. Liam. His voice. Soft. Gentle. Restrained. That restraint felt like a knife to the chest. Keith, Liam choked out. Keith, please. He didn't get to finish. The world tilted sideways, his muscles gave up, and everything went black. He vaguely heard Keith calling his name, but his voice sounded muffled, far away, like he was underwater. Then nothing. Liam opened his eyes to the smell of something warm, something comforting. He blinked, groggy, and pushed himself up. His limbs felt heavy, sore. When he reached up, his fingers brushed something cool stuck to his forehead. A fever patch. What? He stumbled out of bed slowly and walked toward the kitchen. And froze. Keith was standing there, stirring a pot on his stove. He looked up as if he felt him. You feel better? He could only nod. What happened? Liam asked hoarsely. You called last night, he said, turning the stove off. Then I heard a thud and you stopped talking. I panicked and came over. He ladled porridge into a bowl and handed it to him. When I got here, he continued quietly, you were slumped on your bed with a burning fever. He swallowed, throat tightening. He ate a spoonful, the warmth spread through his chest like comfort he didn't deserve. I'm sorry I called, Liam whispered. I didn't know who else to turn to. Keith's eyes softened. I'm glad you called me. He looked up sharply. Surprised. Hope sparking faintly. Keith fidgeted with the hem of his hoodie, avoiding Liam's gaze. What I told you the other day. It was harsh. And it hurt you. It's okay, Liam murmured automatically. It's not. Keith shook his head. I don't want you to have mixed feelings. Especially when you're still trying to fix your life. Liam didn't respond with words. He stood. And he hugged him. Suddenly, tightly, desperately. A hug full of longing, fear, relief, and something deeper he couldn't name without breaking. Keith froze for half a breath. Then melted into him. His arms wrapped around Liam slowly but fully, as if his heart recognized him before his mind did. Liam whispered, voice trembling, "I'm not confused, Keith. I know how it looks, like I'm giving you scraps left over from my ex. But I'm not. This is something real." Had Keith moved an inch, he would have felt how hard Liam's heart was beating. "I want this," he continued, voice cracking. "I want you. I want us to be real." Keith was speechless. He wasn't the type to lose words. But right now, held against Liam, feeling the sincerity trembling through every line of his body, he couldn't form even one. So he just hugged him back. Fully. Gently. Like maybe, just maybe, he could give this a chance. Maybe he didn't need to run. Maybe he could stay. Chapter 8, Warmth Between the Cracks. The first morning Liam woke fever-free, Keith was already in motion, quietly moving around the apartment, brewing coffee, opening the blinds to let the sunlight spill in. "You feel better?" Keith asked when he noticed Liam sitting up on the couch, blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Yeah," he murmured, voice hoarse. "Much better." Keith nodded. "Good. I figured it's better if you stay with me while you recover. My apartment is warmer." Liam blinked. "Warmer?" Keith gestured vaguely around the minimalist space. "Not physically. You'd be fine with blankets and a heater. But, this place, it's not cold in the way your apartment is. Your apartment, it's just, I don't know, empty. You need company. And you can work remotely, so it's fine." Liam looked at Keith for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Thanks." The next few days settled into a strange, comforting rhythm. Keith would make breakfast while Liam sat at the counter, quietly flipping through his laptop or idly stirring his own mug. Keith noticed how Liam relaxed in his presence. He didn't have to maintain that fine facade anymore. Keith saw him laugh at small things, sigh with relief, let himself slouch like the weight of his life didn't press so hard. And he felt himself relax too, even as he tried to keep his guard up. "You always cook this well?" Liam asked one morning as he stirred the porridge. Keith smirked lightly. "Not always. But I like routine. Makes me feel like the world isn't completely chaotic." Liam's gaze lingered, soft, careful. "I like watching you do it." Keith's chest stuttered. He tried to ignore the pull in his stomach but failed. It was the tiny things that got him, the way Liam yawned and rubbed his eyes, how he hummed a little tune while sipping coffee, the way he leaned too close when reading something on the laptop, fingers brushing his occasionally. One afternoon, Liam picked up a paintbrush from his cluttered art corner, twirling it between his fingers. "Do you really make all these?" he asked, gesturing to Keith's sketches and half-finished canvases. Keith nodded, smiling softly. "It helps me think. Helps me breathe." Liam handed the brush back to Keith with a careful, almost reverent motion. You're really something." His heart stuttered. Something? Something more than available emotional support, something more than a client. And that terrified him more than anything. That night, Keith sat on his balcony with a cup of tea, the city lights reflecting in her glass. Liam was inside, curled up under a blanket on the couch, laptop open but mostly ignored. And he realized, he missed him when he wasn't actively speaking to her. When he wasn't right there. His chest tightened with a truth he couldn't deny, he was falling for him. Not just pity. Not just caretaker feelings. Not just a rebound. Falling for Liam. The thought scared him. Terrified him. Because falling meant risking. Falling meant pain. Falling meant attachment. But watching Liam sleep peacefully now, hearing the quiet hum of the city below, seeing the subtle marks of trust he left in his posture and his gaze. He felt warmth he hadn't allowed himself in years. Keith sipped his tea, exhaling slowly. He didn't know how to navigate it yet, didn't know where this line between care and affection ended. But he knew, he could no longer pretend it didn't exist. His hand traced the rim of her cup, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where Liam wasn't just a client, or a visitor, or someone he kept at arm's length. A future where maybe, just maybe, he belonged there. And somewhere deep in his chest, he wondered if Liam had already felt the same. Chapter 9, The First Real Step. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. Liam was perched on the arm of the couch, blanket draped over his shoulders, while Keith sat cross-legged on the opposite sofa. A soft hush hung in the space between them, heavy with anticipation, and yet entirely comfortable. They had spent the evening assembling a small puzzle together. It was silly, trivial even, but it gave them a reason to sit close, to exchange glances, and to brush hands accidentally, or intentionally, against each other. Keith noticed the little things, how Liam's brow furrowed when he concentrated, the slight twitch of his lips when he smiled at a misplaced piece. And he felt his chest tighten with something he refused to name. "You're quiet tonight," Liam murmured, breaking the silence. "I'm thinking," Keith admitted softly, eyes on the puzzle. "About?" He hesitated. Part of him wanted to keep it to himself, part of him wanted Liam to know exactly how he felt. "About us." Liam's head tilted, eyes searching his. "Us?" "Yes, this," he said, gesturing vaguely between them, his heartbeat making his words feel louder than intended. For a long moment, Liam said nothing. He simply reached for Keith's hand. Keith froze. His pulse leapt into overdrive. Liam's fingers grazed his, almost tentative, almost questioning. He didn't pull away. Slowly, he let their fingers intertwine. Liam's eyes softened, a mixture of wonder and relief. "I don't want to let go," he admitted, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Then don't," Keith whispered back, his lips parting slightly, but he didn't move closer yet. Not just yet. Their proximity made every nerve sing. Every heartbeat between them sounded louder than the city outside. No words were necessary, every touch spoke volumes, every breath shared carried their confessions. Liam shifted just enough for his forehead to brush his. I'm scared too," he admitted quietly, the vulnerability in his tone stripping away the remnants of control he usually tried to maintain. "I know," Keith murmured. "But we're here. Together." Keith realized with a shiver that he was falling for him. Fully. Terrifyingly. And for once, the fear wasn't enough to make him pull away. For the first time, being with Liam felt like safety, warmth, and risk all at once, and he wanted it. Chapter 10, Ghosts from the Past. It was a quiet Thursday evening. Liam and Keith were sharing a takeout dinner at Liam's apartment, leaning back on the couch with legs tangled in blankets. The glow from the city lights filtered through the blinds, painting everything in soft gold. Liam laughed quietly at something Keith said about a failed attempt at pottery, and he was mid-smile when the doorbell rang. They both froze. Visitors were unusual at this hour. Keith tilted her head, wary. Liam rose slowly, a frown creasing his forehead. "I didn't expect anyone," he murmured. He opened the door, and there she was. Mike. His ex-fiancée. Smiling, composed, seemingly unaware of the months of chaos he had left behind. "Liam," Mike said, voice smooth, practiced. "We need to talk. I want another chance." For the first time in months, Liam's chest tightened. But instead of panic, a strange clarity washed over him. He looked past him, at Keith, quiet, steady, calm, and something clicked inside him. "No," he said firmly, stepping forward. "There's nothing to talk about. You betrayed me. That's not something we can fix. Mike's eyes flicked to Keith, narrowing slightly. Who's he? My boyfriend, Liam said plainly, words leaving his mouth with ease he hadn't felt in months. And I want you to leave. Now. Mike's expression faltered, then hardened. You're happy with him? I am, Liam said, eyes meeting Mike's with a steady calm he hadn't felt when he was begging months ago. I hope you find someone who values you. I really do. But I've moved on. And you should too. Mike's jaw tightened, then he exploded in anger. No one wants a boring you anyway. Liam didn't respond. He merely closed the door, a small, quiet satisfaction settling in his chest. He turned back to Keith, who was watching him, worry and admiration mixed in his gaze. Are you okay? Keith asked softly. He smiled faintly, chest still tight but steady. I've never been more okay, he admitted. I feel in control for the first time in months. And I owe that to you. Keith felt a warmth spread through him, heart swelling at his words. They shared a small, intimate glance, and the rest of the night passed in quiet comfort, their bond strengthened by the external chaos that no longer threatened them. Chapter 11, Worth More. The next morning, Keith found Liam perched by the balcony, staring out at the city with a soft, faraway look in his eyes. He walked over, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You okay? Keith asked, voice soft. I am, Liam replied, glancing at him. Thanks to you. Keith stood beside him, the words he'd rehearsed in his head for days finally surfacing. You know, the first time you called me, I wanted to tell you something. Liam tilted his head. Oh? Yes. I didn't then, because I was just there to listen. But now I need to tell you. He leaned forward slightly, attentive. You're worth more than people who weaponize love, Keith said carefully, eyes locked on his. You're not boring. Being steady isn't a flaw. Loyalty doesn't make you less interesting. You're incredible. Liam's chest tightened. Heat rushed to his face. He remembered telling Keith he only needed someone to listen that first night. And he had held on to that. Keith, he whispered, voice thick. You don't need to say anything, Keith reassured him. Just know that I'm here. Not because you're broken. Not because you need fixing. I'm here because I chose to be. Liam's hands wrapped around him, pulling him into a tight embrace. Forehead resting against his, heartbeat against heartbeat. Thank you, for staying. For being here. Despite everything. Keith tightened his hold, whispering, I'm not here to fix you. I'm here because I want to. That's all. That's enough. Liam closed his eyes, letting the comfort of Keith's presence anchor him. For the first time, he felt whole again. And Keith, feeling the weight of his trust, let herself fall a little more, for him, for them, for whatever this was becoming. In the quiet of the apartment, the hum of the city outside, they allowed themselves to exist fully together. Not as client and support, not as broken hearts patched temporarily, but as two people choosing each other. And it was enough. Chapter 12, Learning to Be Us. The city felt different now. Even the familiar streets seemed softer, warmer, when Keith and Liam walked side by side. They weren't hiding anymore, not like before. The coffee shop where they used to sneak quiet conversations now had them laughing openly, hands brushing occasionally on the table. Small, careful touches that felt like secret declarations to anyone paying attention. Keith carried a small sense of fear beneath the surface every time they went out. People stared sometimes. And yet, when Liam reached for his hand, he let him. When Liam rested his head against his shoulder in public, he didn't pull away. It was terrifying. But it was also thrilling. At home, they had found their rhythm. Liam would make breakfast occasionally, pancakes, eggs, or something experimental, while Keith prepared his sketches. They shared chores, laughter, and silent comfort. But they also learned boundaries. "Don't touch that," Kat warned one evening as Liam reached for a wet canvas. "I wasn't going to. I just wanted to help," he protested, frowning slightly. "You always want to help," she teased, smirking. "Sometimes I like doing things my way." He chuckled and backed off. It was small, silly, and domestic, but it mattered. They were learning how to be together without losing themselves. A week later, Liam insisted on walking Keith home from his apartment after dinner. The streets were crowded, but they held hands tightly, fingers interlaced, as if the world around them didn't exist. "You don't have to hold my hand," Keith said softly, his face heating. "I want to," Liam replied, tone quiet but firm. "I don't care who's watching." Keith looked up at him, heart thudding. There it was again, the thrill of being seen together, of being his publicly, even in these small gestures. When they reached his apartment building, Keith paused. "Wanna come up?" Liam hesitated. The old instinct flared. I don't know." Keith nodded. "You just declared to your ex that I'm your boyfriend. And you've been to my apartment so many times already." "Don't worry," he said in full confidence while giving Liam's hand a gentle squeeze. Liam smiled and nodded. Inside, their conversations grew deeper. Liam opened up about past insecurities, his fears, and small regrets. Keith listened, not to fix, not to judge, but to hold space. And then it was his turn. "I was scared," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of falling, scared of letting someone see me this close. But I can't ignore it anymore. I care about you, Liam. More than I should. More than I expected." Liam stared at Keith for a moment before speaking. "I care about you too. And that's enough for me. I'll figure out everything else with you, step by step." That night, Liam stayed over. They didn't rush anything. There were no grand declarations or fevered kisses. Just quiet, the hum of the city outside, the warmth of their bodies under blankets, the soft brush of lips on foreheads, hands on shoulders, and the comfort of presence. Keith rested his head against Liam's chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. Liam held him close, as if to anchor him, as if to say silently, "You're safe here." "I'm learning how to be with you," Liam whispered. "How to hold you without overstepping, how to love you without breaking anything." "You don't have to learn alone," Keith replied, voice soft. "We'll figure it out together." The apartment was small, the world outside vast, but inside it, they created a space that was theirs alone. Vulnerable, tender, and real. And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Keith realized something terrifying and wonderful: falling for Liam wasn't a mistake. It was the first choice he'd made in a long time that felt entirely right. Together, they were learning what it meant to be more than two people healed by circumstance. They were learning what it meant to be us. Epilogue: Home, Heart, and Forever. A soft glow from the early evening sun filtered through the wide windows of their new apartment. The city hummed outside, but inside, life moved at its own gentle rhythm. Keith sat cross-legged on the couch, sketchpad in hand, quietly drawing. Liam hovered nearby, arms full of grocery bags, trying not to bump into anything as he carefully placed each item in the kitchen. "You know," he said without looking up, "you're really good at pretending to be domestic." "I'm excellent at pretending," he countered, grinning, holding a carton of eggs like it was a trophy. Keith laughed, finally glancing at him. "You're ridiculous. And I love it. And you're terrifyingly organized," he teased, brushing a strand of hair from Keith's forehead as he leaned down. "But I love that too." They moved through the apartment like a practice dance, comfortable, familiar, yet still charged with the subtle electricity that had always existed between them. A brush of a hand here, a shoulder nudge there. Quiet intimacy wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Later that evening, Keith returned home from a quick run to the art store. The apartment smelled faintly of his favorite vanilla candles, the lights dimmed just so, and soft music played in the background. "Keith," he began, voice low, steady, but full of emotion. He took a cautious step forward. "Liam, what is all this?" He chuckled softly, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. "I just wanted you to know how much you mean to me. How much you've changed my life, how much I love you." Keith's heart thundered loudly in his chest. He could feel the sincerity radiating from him, the weight of months of growth, of trust, of quiet devotion. "And, well," he continued, kneeling slowly in front of her, "I want to ask something very important." Liam opened a small velvet box, revealing a delicate, elegant ring that caught the light in the softest way. "Keith Lim," he said, voice trembling just slightly, "I love you. I want to be with you, not just in stolen moments, not just in private apartments or quiet evenings. I want to share life with you, openly, completely, every day. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in his eyes, his chest tight with emotion. He looked at Liam, the man who had healed alongside him, who had trusted him, who had loved her fiercely and tenderly. "Yes," he whispered, barely audible but overflowing with certainty. "Yes, Liam. I will." He slid the ring onto his finger, and they embraced, laughter and tears mingling. It was quiet, intimate, and perfect. Weeks later, they were still adjusting to the new rhythm of engagement life, planning small celebrations, choosing furniture for the apartment together, laughing at the chaos of mismatched kitchen utensils, and teasing each other endlessly. Keith had begun sharing subtle glimpses of their life online, carefully curated, always private enough to feel safe, but showing small moments of love. Liam occasionally teased him when he appeared in a photo, but he caught him holding his hand or brushing his hair out of his face, and he smiled at the comfort it brought. Even the smallest things, the way Liam brewed coffee for him in the morning, the way Keith left sticky notes with little doodles on Liam's laptop, spoke volumes about the life they were building together. And in the quiet moments, when the city faded into night, they sat together, arms wrapped around each other, knowing that no matter what challenges came, no matter how the world watched or whispered, they had chosen each other fully. Keith rested his head on Liam's shoulder, whispering softly, "We're home, aren't we?" Liam kissed his hair, holding Keith tighter. "We are. With each other, always." And for the first time, both of them felt the certainty of forever. Thank you for listening Under the Same Moon. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, you're always welcome here. Good night.